Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio with your hosts, Irene and Mark and Mark Johnson.
Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio network. I'm your host, Irene and Block, and with me again tonight is my co-host, Mark Johnson.
Are you sure this time?
Yes, okay. I'm sure this time.
Okay, just want to make sure, not for any reason that anybody needs to know. You know, just making sure.
Yes, it's my co-host, Mark Johnson.
Mark Johnson. You know, say that
Mark
a few times.
Johnson.
And maybe you will remember it.
You wouldn't. I don't believe this. You know, after 7 years, that I actually forgot who you were. It must be that I'm getting old.
Yeah, or it's just like other people. They all try to forget who I am after a while.
Oh no, they don't. They don't.
Oh well.
Honestly.
You can just blame it with Italy on your mind. How's that?
Yes, that's it. Italy's on my mind. 2 weeks now. I think just 2 weeks and a few days, and then I'll be in the south of Italy. But you've just been somewhere, Mark, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. I went to Las Vegas over the weekend. For my 35-year high school reunion.
Nice.
It was nice seeing a bunch of people I haven't seen in a long time.
And that just shows how old you are, you're saying that. 35 years.
Did I say 35? I meant 5.
35.
5.
35.
Minus 5.
35. 35 people will tell you, how old are you when you leave school? He must be in his 50s.
Well, see, there's the physical age, and then there's the, maturity age. Maturity age, I'm still about like 14, but...
Yeah, I thought I was close when I said 10.
What's the old adage? I may be getting older, but I'll be immature forever. Keep that in mind, ladies.
Yes. Yes, anyone that wants a toy boy, he's still out there.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, you had a good time.
Oh, yes, I had a lovely time. We had a room for the event up on the Stratosphere, the tower at the Stratosphere Hotel. And I'd never been up there before. And at 1,100 feet up, what a view. Gotta say, that was an insane view up there. But yeah, had a great time. Except it was insanely hot. Like, I think it was on average between 113 to 117.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot. And that must have been like looking out of an airplane at all the little people down below.
Oh, what's funny is they have the helicopter. They have the helicopter tours nearby coming from the airport, and they fly at eye level as they go by the tower. So,
do they?
Yeah.
Well, so that they can have a peep in to see what people are eating.
Yeah, and you wave at them as they go by.
And which is the hotel that I want to stay at when I'm out there?
The Bellagio.
That's right. That's where I'm going to book in.
Yep, I like the Bellagio. I want to go back and go there.
Yeah, well, my son stayed at Caesars for a fortnight. He was at Caesars when he was out there, and he quite liked it.
Caesars is lovely. They've renovated it a few years ago, and it's really top notch. So definitely, yeah. But I do recommend going not in the summer.
No,
you can go in the fall, winter, or spring. Summer, no, stay home. It is too insanely hot.
Let me get this right then. If it's winter or fall, is it nice, comfortable temperatures, but not like over here in Britain with hell force winds and gales and this and looking like something out of Wuthering Heights? No?
It's the desert. It's in the middle of the desert. So, I mean, in the wintertime, it can get cooler. I mean, it can get down in the 50s or 60s, but sometimes it's in the 70s and 80s, and it's more mild and very dry. So, but definitely the height of summer, July, August, not good times to go.
So what's spring like then?
Nicer.
No, I'm working out. I can take temperatures up to about 90, I think, and then after that,
would be spring.
I've had it.
Yeah, that would work well in spring. Definitely. Yeah.
Oh well, I booked spring then.
There you go. So we have a great guest tonight. Who are we speaking with?
We're speaking with a lady who, no, I'm really, I don't want to ruin this. I really don't, because I've already done a bit of pre-advertising on it. But she was an executor for a friend's will. And she had to sell the house, and she had to pack up all his stuff. And of course, during this particular time, she had a terrible, terrible experience.
And this was also featured on the television program A Haunting.
Well, I was going to wait for that until the interview, but now you've
fine.
said it. Go on, carry on.
Okay.
No, carry on.
Well, her story was featured on an episode of A Haunting TV show. And we want to welcome Anita Jo Intenzo to the program. How are you tonight, Anita?
Yeah, hello.
Thank you very much, Mark and Irene. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on your show.
I just called you Joe. Why did I just call you Joe?
That's okay.
Sorry about that, Anita.
That's okay. It's my middle name.
Like I said, she's got Italy on her mind.
I wish you were taking me with her. I'd like to go to Italy.
Oh, yeah, you can come. You can come. I tell you.
Off the Amalfi Coast.
Hmm?
Off the Amalfi Coast.
Yeah, south of Italy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Anita,
was just on the road. Capri over the water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, bring your head back to the show. We have a show to do here.
Go on then.
Okay, Anita. So thank you for coming on the show, and for anybody who has not already seen your episode that you did of A Haunting, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how this situation developed?
Well, I've known my friend for about 30 years. He was an anthropologist, and my friend Paul and I met at a lecture for Native American culture. He was mostly focused in his studies in the South American Mayan Indian culture. So I attended something that was dealing with some of the Native North American culture, and he happened to be there, and we met, and we just exchanged information about how much we enjoyed archaeology and history, and we became friends after that. And after 30 years, getting to know him, knowing his family, it was just a routine of ours all the time to talk about history and some of the really great things that we both enjoyed, music and different movies, things like that. But I've known him, as I said, for 30 years. And in 2009, I was shocked to get a phone call that my friend had passed away. And it was something unexpected because he had been in some of the best health of his life, very active, very health conscious in food and exercise. But they told me he had suffered a heart attack. So when I went to the hospital to be there for him, I was held up in the reception room, the waiting room. And then I felt really kind of a sinking feeling that something wasn't going right. And they had told me that as he was in the operating room, his blood pressure had crashed, and he actually died on the operating table before they could do anything for him. So it was very shocking to me. I was like really overcome with grief because I just had talked to him a few days before that and had no indication that he was feeling ill. And apparently he didn't know either. He had called 911 from what I understand and was having like an asthma attack, he thought, and didn't realize it was a heart attack. So I was suddenly thrust into the situation to meet with his lawyer the next day after my friend passed away, and found out that not only was I the executress of his estate, but I was in charge of getting all the different pages of his will, the different wishes that he had written down, to have those executed. And it was a 7-page detailed will. So I had a really daunting task in front of me.
You had no idea that he had made you the executor?
He had talked about it, and we had agreed on it. I had signed some paperwork, but of course, when you sign that, you think that's going to be many years down the road before you're going to be called on. And here, it was not even 2 years since we had discussed it, and he wanted to make me his executor, that then I was called into the service. So everything was legal. The lawyer sat with me and told me what was expected of me, and none of his family, my friend's family, could be involved because he did not have a really good relationship with his oldest brother. There was only one brother living near him, and that brother was not even allowed to be in the house because there was a lot of there apparently had been a really big argument, and I wasn't really in on a lot of the family dynamics at that point between him and his brother. But the lawyer just told me, you're in charge of everything, and I had no idea what I was in for, because when I entered his home the next day, had to get keys from the hospital. I wasn't even sure what keys opened what door. And my son went with me as moral support. We went one evening. It was getting, getting dark about 4:30, 5 o'clock. This was in January 2009. And we entered the house and saw that it was not well kept. Apparently my friend hadn't been maybe feeling that well for several months. And then I started seeing the task in front of me, and it was something out of like you'd see in a movie where there was a hoarding situation.
Very daunting, yeah? Very daunting.
Yes.
Did he live close to you, Anita?
Excuse me?
Did he live very close to you?
Yes, it was only about a 10-15 minute ride from where I live outside of Philadelphia. And he had lived in the house for about 30 years. His parents had passed away before him. But what I didn't realize was they left all their belongings and documents, and he never got rid of any of that. Plus his extensive travels with his family, the artifacts and the different things they collected. It took us 10 months to clean out the house. That was putting in 40-hour weeks at the house. It was unbelievable situation. And that while we started doing that, my main focus was, I've got to find the things that we need to identify from the will. They have to go to certain people. And also I need to find documentation for the lawyer, for the different transactions, for his financial accounts. And also he had left a lot of different organizations and people money transactions that they were beneficiaries. And apparently I did not know what his amount of worth was, but apparently his parents had left pretty much everything to him and did not leave anything much to his oldest brother. So that was kind of creepy to me, because I'm in the middle of a situation between a family feud, and I've got to keep everybody from boiling over with their expectations. And the brother wasn't really happy that I was left in charge. His first words to me were, "Oh, you're going to throw everything out, and I'm not going to get to keep any of my family artifacts or the different historical pieces." And I said, "Look, you don't know me. I will be methodical." And that's why it took me 10 months with my son's help to go through every single piece of paper to find out who got what. And then the brother became much my advocate when he realized how much I packed up hundreds of boxes of things that belonged to him, that he would want from his family, photographs. And eventually there were books and things that he couldn't even take anymore. He had filled up 2 storage lockers with things I had given him. And I donated 700 bags of just clothing and other books and things to charity, plus books to the library. And then he willed me many, many boxes, hundreds of boxes of artifacts that were from his travels and from his lectures that he did with local organizations. So it was like creating up and packing away a museum at that point, because I had no idea the amount of things that were packed away in closets. And in the basement alone, it took us probably 4 or 5 months to clean that out before we can attempt other areas in the house. And that's when about 5 months into cleaning out this house and just really being focused on that and not thinking anything other than, okay, we've got to pack this stuff up. We need to do this for the lawyer. And, we don't want to carry this on for years. Let's see how fast we can get this done. And then we started having some poltergeist activity, which we weren't sure what we were experiencing at the very beginning. My son and I are not, we're not ghost hunters. We always enjoyed watching the shows on television and really kept an open mind on people's experiences, but had no idea we had stepped into what.
So how did the poltergeist activity actually start? What was the first thing? Can you remember?
Yeah. Yes. The first thing was, we had started in January. Around May, we were in the basement, and we needed to get a section of the basement completely cleared out because we were getting flooding in the basement on one of the walls. And I contacted the lawyer, and we needed to have construction done to dig into the floor, the concrete floor of the basement, and put a sump pump, because I told him, I said, there's black mold down here. This place has been flooding. My friend never got this fixed. And this is unhealthy conditions for us to be working on in all this. The smell was horrendous because there was no ventilation. There was no back door. This was a 1950s rancher style home, and it didn't have an back door escape, which I was surprised that wasn't part of
and
the
black
feature.
mold can be dangerous, can't it?
Oh, yes. I mean, especially if you're breathing it in. So by contacting the company and getting this plan of getting the concrete broken and putting the sump pump to help with the water problem, we were clearing things out. We were in kind of a frantic mode because we realized we didn't have a lot of time, and we wanted everything on one wall, which was a good long wall that went to this home. That it lasted. The whole basement was probably the length of the house. So you're looking at probably 40 feet, and it was pretty wide. So we needed one wall. And as we're moving things into the other side of the basement, then the contractors were going to put plastic sheets down across so the dust wouldn't carry into the other part of the basement. My son says to me, "What keeps falling? I hear things dropping." And I'm in one section of the basement. There was a staircase that divided the two sections of the basement, and he's on the other side. And he said, something just hit the wall, and I heard a crash. And I said, "What's going on over in your side of the basement?" And he said, now this is in 2009, and my friend had a lot of cassette tapes, the plastic cassette tapes. He had film slides that he took on his travels, but apparently a cassette tape had flown across the room and smashed against the concrete wall. And my son looked up and he said, "Where did this come from?" And I was not really believing him at first. I said, "What is the noise that I keep hearing?" And he said, "Mom, that just flew across the room." And I half believed him. And I said, "Well, are you sure you didn't knock something down?" "No." He said, that's what happened. Well, within a few minutes, I heard a book fly from the shelf when I returned to the other side of the basement. And this book, it was just at my feet. And I said, "I didn't disturb that. That came right off the shelf." And then things started happening where they're hitting, another thing hit against the wall. So we knew something was either trying to get our attention or something was really strange. And when you've never seen that.
Anita,
Yes,
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I know you're on a flow there. But when your friend was alive, did he ever mention any activity going on in the house?
No. One time he said to me after his mother died in 2001, he was playing music that he knew she loved. And he told me over a phone conversation, he felt his mother was very close and he could maybe feel her in the house, or that something was there. And I didn't really dispute that, because I said, "You were a really good son to your mom. You took care of her in her last year or so when she was very ill. And if she did come back, she's probably thanking you for being so devoted to her." And, we didn't feel there was anything of a dark or sinister nature. It was maybe more of a loving presence. And I believed him that he felt there was something there, but it didn't go beyond that. That's the only time that he talked about that.
Yeah, well, you weren't the type of person to be into the paranormal anyway, were you? Except for, like you say, looking at a couple of television shows.
Yes, I basically, I read up on different things that were interesting. Years ago, I'm an artist, I'm a restoration artist, and I deal with a lot of historical artifacts and photographs. And I've always had the deep love of history. And almost when I restore antique dolls, and the dolls have a personality and an interest always, but never felt creeped out by dolls or felt like that they're possessed, or which is like, that's really interests me and almost appalls me to see the level that that's even been taken to, about that people say dolls are being possessed or this, because I've collected dolls all my life and never felt anything that would be other than a beautiful piece of artwork or something that was lovingly made by a mother to give to her child. And also I've lectured about the history of what dolls mean to a culture and to the children raised in that culture. And I've gone to many different clubs and retirement homes and talked to them about their treasured possessions. A lot of these people in their 80s and 70s and had antique dolls, that they might have had in the family, and they will bring something they might still own and get me to appraise it. So that none of that seemed to bother me. So I felt that my son and I were really kind of like a blank canvas. And that's the way I approached when I was keeping the notes on what was happening, because it started happening that one day, and then it continued after that every time we went to the house, my son started getting feelings before we even entered the driveway. He would start getting sick to his stomach, feeling like, like he was apprehensive about going to the house. But we continued doing it because we knew it was just so much that had to be done. You had to put some of these things on the back burner, but it's like something there did not want us to be complacent and to dismiss it. So there was paranormal activity of the poltergeist nature almost every single time we were there. It would start within a few minutes that we would enter the house and something would get thrown, like a pen. My friend was a writer and a teacher, so there was a lot of pens and writing material that we were constantly seeing, like paper clips hitting the wall. There would be pens. There would be just anything and everything you can imagine that would be lightweight to be thrown against a wall.
So did you think it was him at that point? Did you think he was trying to make contact?
Well, what made me think that could have been him was one incident in his bedroom. We needed to clear out. His room was filled with statues and books and artifacts that it was like walking into a museum. So we needed to clear out his room as one of the first rooms. And there were a stack of Tupperware bins against one wall. And we had approached it by, like, let's start with this section because we can't even move in here. It's so crammed. And we started packing away the statues. And as we made our way and cleared out about half of the room, my son and I were outside of the room into another room to gather more boxes. And we heard this huge crash in the room, and we thought for sure a bookshelf or something had come off the wall and was just down. So we were not sure what we'd find. And here it was the Tupperware bins that were against a wall that actually had been thrown to the middle of the room from the outside wall to the front. So it was like someone went in back of those bins and pushed them to the middle of the room, where one of the lids popped open and these Native American artifacts popped open, and they were all strewn around the floor. And my son looked at me and he goes, I don't know what just happened, but if that's your friend, you better tell him, that don't hurt us. Like, we're here to do what he asked us in the will. And that's what I did. I spoke to the air and I said, if it's you, Paul, I said, we're here to clear out the house because you want the house to be sold and give to charity the money. I said, we're here because we need to do this. But do you know that you passed away, that you are dead? I said, I'm letting you know that you are deceased. And I'm sorry if I'm upsetting you by moving your things, but that we need to do this. And then after that, it calmed down. So then I figured something is here, and it's my friend. That was my first instinct, that because we were very close. And I just felt like he was upset because we were moving things out of his room.
Yeah, but obviously as time went on, you found out different, didn't you?
Well, I was just going to say.
Well, yes, it was him. And then he was just the least of our worries. There was other things as the time progressed in the next 5 months, and it was very hot. The air conditioning didn't work very well in the home. We were pressed for time. The stress level was through the roof for me because I would be there. I was also taking care of a sick mother, and my dad had Parkinson's and my mother had a heart condition. So not only I was away from my work that kept me kind of balanced, my artwork, but I was worried about my parents. I was back and forth with them, then going to my friend's house. So I was taking care of 3 households at that point. And luckily, my mom was in pretty stable condition for those first really critical 6-7 months, and then she landed in the hospital. And then I was torn between making sure she was being cared for, my dad had to be cared for, and my son and I didn't know where to divide ourselves half the time because it was that stress. And then to go to my friend's house and have what we were dealing with, and we talked about that to my parents, and my mom believed it because she has that background where she believed in me. My dad was not really that convinced, but he told me, he said, I believe you, Anita. I don't know if I believe in paranormal, but I know you're telling the truth. So I believe you, what you're telling me. But he didn't know what to make of it either. And they were very worried that we could be in some serious danger when we started telling them the amount of strange things. We had friends come. My son picked friends that he knew he could trust because we had to be very careful about people going in there because we knew we were facing a situation and we didn't want anybody getting hurt other that if it was us that we knew we were getting ourselves into because we did speak to the lawyer and tell him what we were up against. I said, whether you believe this or not, which he did believe us because he knew that, you know, we're the type of people not to make up these stories. And he just said, look, he said, just do what you need to do. If you can't do this anymore, I don't know how we're going to handle this because I would be afraid of sending any other cleanup team in there. But we promised him we would stick it out as best we could because you didn't know where things were, if there was anything valuable that had to go to the family. You just didn't want strangers in there not knowing what they could be facing, and maybe who was ever in the house as spirit-wise would not maybe take kindly to other outsiders because my son's friends would come in at different intervals and they were actually, things were thrown at them to hit them or to scare them. And one by one, you know, maybe they would stay once or twice to help us move out a lot of the junk that was in, that just had to be thrown out, and trash and just newspapers and magazines. But they would maybe come once or twice and then they wouldn't come back anymore because they would see things or be part of things.
Yeah.
And they said, well, I didn't believe you, but I believe you now. So, you know, it was a very close circle of who we can have in there because of the circumstances.
Now, Anita, with all of this this poltergeist type activity, was there any other type of activity did people start hearing things or seeing, smelling things, anything else? Or was it primarily just things being thrown about?
No, that what you just asked me is probably ditto. Everything that you just said. We had weird smells of a wet cat, which my friend did have a cat. We found the deceased cat's ashes in a box in one of the closets. So that was very strange finding that. He did have two other cats that we made sure went to someone who was going to take good care of them. And the thing was, we knew the room that the cats used to stay in. We had pulled up a carpet and cleaned out that room. But what we would smell is like wet cat that was horrendous. And then hear scratching marks in the wall, that was scary. And then we saw shadow figures in the basement, things. And then at the end of the day, we would listen back and the stuff that we picked up, them and someone tell us to get it. We actually heard a voice say, get out. And that came from like the parents' bedroom. And I had actually two cousins who insisted on coming over. And I said, you know, once you're here, go ahead and take some pictures and things, but this is not an entertainment venue. And I have no idea if you're going to capture anything. Well, when they heard the voice get out, they ran out of the house and they never offered to come back because I told them, once you're here, I don't know if you ever want to come back because we're facing some things we do not know what's going on. But I was able, also, we had a camcorder. My son, he used that on about 8 different occasions, and we always had to bring extra batteries, which would get drained. We had a long extension cord that we wound up using a lot of times, and a lot of the recordings and the video that we captured, that became the basis for my first book, A State of Horror, talking about what had happened with my friend. So luckily, we did have evidence and things we captured. And on YouTube, we have several shortened videos of poltergeist activity that was captured. And on one video, especially, there's a voice that was captured that we asked if he was there at the house, if my friend was there. And there is an answer to it, but we don't know if it said, I'm an angel or here. We weren't able to really decipher, but it was an answer to what we were saying, you know, are you here? Are you in spirit form? And and other people saw things happen right in front of us that we would be talking and something would just drop on their heads and they would look up at the ceiling. I go, yeah, they're active today. I said, now you want some evidence? And we had an ex-Marine who came with a friend of my son's, and he ran out of the house. He said, I'm not staying. I'm not going to the basement. That's where you don't want to do that. And he was he was very skeptical as soon as he came in. and saw what was going on. That just nonchalant, you're just talking and things just start. And he just left. He goes, I'm not staying here. He said, this really is something else. So we did have witnesses. We did have, I was documenting things in a diary, and the video. Yeah, we have a lot of pictures that we have stored for that house. And then of course, then when it went to my house, I have a lot of documented evidence from that too.
We'll get onto your house later on,
yes.
Anita. when you were in the house packing up and everything, obviously there must have been times when you were in a room on your own. Did you feel anything evil, negative, evil or anything around you at any time when did the atmosphere change, or did you get spooked?
It was strange. I wasn't ever, after the incident started, my son forbid me to be at the house by myself unless he could be with me. He was so frightened that, he said, Mom, we had a metal bolt, a screw bolt about 2 inches long that was thrown across the room and actually dented a metal cabinet. And I said, if somebody had been hit with that, you could be killed with that. So, of course, it was in a different direction than we were in the basement, but my son did not want me to be there alone. But one incident where we were separated, he was in the parents' room, that he was taking the camcorder and he just wanted to photograph if he could pick up anything in the bedroom. And I was in another room and we were talking, I was calling to him from where I was. And then I said, and I had a bell, or there was all these little souvenirs that I was packing up, and I was ringing the bell, and we were joking from It's a Wonderful Life. I go, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. Well, because I said that, as soon as I said that, my son in the other room, the door slammed in front of his face. He could not get out of the room. The handle froze, and he started yelling for me because he was just so taken back. And I ran because I didn't know what had happened. I heard this big bang of the door, and it took me a few seconds to get the door handle. It just wouldn't move, and finally it opened. And my son's crouched in the corner, so scared out of his mind, and he's got the camcorder. Like he said, "You won't believe what just happened. They just slammed the door right in front of me," and he had heard like something curse him out, and that just frightened him tremendously. And we knew after a while something else was happening, that we knew it wasn't my friend. There was something else of a darker nature because it was nasty. There are things that were happening weren't just benign. They were really, some of it was just downright just of a dark and evil nature. And I could say that because my son was thrown to the ground at one point. We were in the kitchen and I turned the camera.
That's not good, is it?
Excuse me?
I said, that's not good, being thrown to the ground.
No, in fact, this was in August. He had been in the kitchen. We heard a noise way back in the hallway. He went to go investigate it. So I said, well, let me turn the camera facing you so as you're going down. Before I could even get to the camera, he's on the ground. He was thrown to the ground. And he just laid there for about 5 minutes. And all he had the breath just knocked out of him. The wind was just knocked out of him. And he couldn't move because he was just so stunned that he was down on the ground. Luckily it was carpeted, but his glasses had flown off. He was clutching his arm, and he said, I can't move right this minute. I'm afraid I broke my arm. And I was scared. I just said, what do you want me to do? You want me to call 911? He said, no. It took him a few minutes to slowly get up. He was holding onto his wrist. Luckily it wasn't broken. I quick got an ice from the refrigerator, the freezer, and put it on his wrist. But his glasses weren't broken. But he said, someone grabbed me from the ankle, and I'm just down on the ground. He said, it happened so quick. And as I said, I had turned the camera from a split second. He was out of my line of sight. He's on the ground. And only 2 months before that, I had been outside in the garden, and there was a garden house, a little masonry structure, about maybe 8 by 12 room that my friend's father had used as a gardening shed. And that was filled to the brim, and we were in there cleaning it out. And a friend of mine and my son were outside, and I was closing up for the day. It was so hot, we couldn't be in there very long. And here, as I'm walking through the doorway, there's no one behind me. There's just my son and my friend on the grass. as I'm coming out the door, I felt someone push me from behind, and I tumbled over boxes that were just there that we had already packed. And my son and my friend, they just looked at me. It happened so fast they couldn't even catch me, and I had bruises on my left leg for a couple weeks because I had shorts on. I hit the cardboard boxes on an angle, and they just said, "What happened?" I said, "Someone just pushed me." I said, I had no control and I couldn't even catch myself. So those were two things that took a turn of just, okay, you're throwing things and you're telling us crazy things like, oh, the devil's coming for you, or, get out, or things of the nature to maybe scare us. But now we were physically being attacked. And that's when things just got worse and worse as we went on.
So did you actually, in the end, did you call in anyone?
Yes, we finally realized after when my son was thrown, we could not deal with this any longer for ourselves. We did try to get in touch with a religious person. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I was very disappointed that someone was trying to intervene for me and call to a higher up of the church, and they would not come. They just didn't want to have anything to do with. They said, I'm not going to deal with this. And then we talked to another friend, and he said, "Have you ever tried this group? I saw them online and they were local." So I called this local Delco Ghosts, and they were really great. Their head person, Laurie Hall McCabe, she got back in touch with me right away after I put a call into their organization, and she asked me some questions. She wanted to make sure I was on the up and up, because I can imagine, they get all kinds of maybe crank calls too. So she was being really cautious. And I said, well, if you want to meet us at the house, we really need to get to the bottom of this, because the house is going to get sold. We don't want this to carry over for new owners. I said, things are getting really very serious over here. There's activity. We just don't know what's going to happen from day to day, and we need to get something set up. So they did come within a week or two. They brought a medium with them, and another person that helped Laurie, and they're all in the book. And we talk about what had happened for them when they came, and they were able to identify right away that when she walked in, she said, "Oh yeah." She said, there is something here. And we felt such a great relief, my son and I, because we now were getting validation that it just wasn't our circle of friends or people that might not believe us, but we actually had people that did this all the time. And she was a psychic medium from a little girl, and she could pick up on all kinds of things. And the medium was picking up things. They went into the basement. They were getting certain impressions. They said, oh, they just went upstairs again because they know we're here to help. And then we went back upstairs to the living room and conducted not, I would say, a seance, but a contact type of intervention that they were able to then make contact with my friend through the medium. And I knew it was my friend that was speaking to me because he was very cultured. He came from a European background. He was he had phrases that he used that were a little bit out of the ordinary, that were eccentric, and because of he was so cultured and the way he spoke. And I knew by the way he was speaking that was my friend. I have no doubt.
So the medium went into trance, did he?
Yes, he did. And at first I didn't know what he was even doing, and he took a couple big breaths. He had coughed at one point that he was trying to clear his throat, and I thought, well, I guess he's just getting in a comfortable position. But later he told me, and it made so much sense. He said, no, he said, the first kind of contact I was getting was a choking sensation, and he said I needed to clear my throat, but I didn't know if it was something that was in the house that I was trying to clear my throat, or if it was just an allergic reaction to dust or something. But then when we found out, when my friend spoke through him, the apprehension that he knew he was ill and he couldn't catch his breath and he was coughing, that was like really amazing that he picked up on that type of illness that he was suffering with the asthma before this went into the heart attack. And it was It was, I can't explain exactly how it felt to be connected with him again, but it was very emotional. We were just, I was in tears because it was something, I wanted to be there, that I was so upset with the doctors that he had been in a coma before they called me, and they waited so long to contact me. They said, well, we found your name in his wallet. You're the next person to call. And I said, well, you could have called me, like sooner. I said, I would be here to hold his hand. I didn't want him to die alone. And that was what I regretted, that I wasn't there to hold his hand as he passed away, that he was already gone when I got there. And I did say to him, I will do everything I can to whatever your wishes are, I'll carry it out no matter how hard it is, because he knew he trusted me. I knew that he trusted me, and he knew that he could leave it in my hands, but I had no idea that it was going to be to the level of what I was going to get into. So it was emotional.
Yeah, it must be. It must be. But when he brought this your friend Paul through, did you feel his presence in the room or anything besides being able to identify him through the medium's speech?
Yes, I was deeply touched because of our deep friendship, that his words to me were one of regret that he left so much in my lap, that he was sorry, very, very sorry for having to put the burden on me. He was trying to tell me that he meant to get some things done that should have been taken care of and not left on me, but he didn't realize he was that sick, that he died so suddenly. He had a massive heart attack. The doctor said he had what we call silent heart attack several days before. He thought it was the asthma, and using medications opened up the passageway so he could breathe, but he did not go to the doctor. So when he had the second heart attack on a Sunday, it was so massive, it ruptured the valve to the heart, and it was so bad there was nothing they could do for him. He died. He was in this coma, but then there was nothing they could do to help him. He said if he had come when he had that first attack on a Thursday, we probably could have saved him, but he didn't know that was that bad.
He thought he was having an asthma attack, didn't he?
Yes, and in fact, I had to deal with the pharmaceutical company that made the asthma medication that had to be reported to the Food and Drug Administration. There was a legal procedure to tell them that this certain drug he was on, that this actually masked the heart attack for him, that maybe he would have sought medical advice or gone to the doctor sooner, but it was just a tragedy that this happened. And but he would not want to be a vegetable. Like he had this attack, he was in the coma, and I knew that he would not want to be a burden to anybody, and that if he had to go, that he didn't suffer, that it was that way it happened. But his presence to me was one of deep concern, and he was also taken back, like why he died so suddenly. And then Laurie and her friend were able to explain to him, how sorry they were that his life was cut short. There were so many things he wanted to complete, but they said to him, there's nothing you can do right now by being earthbound, but if you go to the light, maybe you can help Anita much more with your presence, in that sort of a strong binding of the good light. Because also, while we were having the discussion with him, my son was recording. We were picking up very negative voices saying for him to shut up, not to tell us things, and they wanted us out of there. So he was doing this almost in the way of like, I've got to warn you because there's other things here that don't want me to say these things, but I'm going to. And that's what we did. We got him to the light, and we felt that there was a great relief among all of us that he was able to move on, but something else lingered that Laurie was very concerned about. She said, it's not over, Anita. She said, your friend is gone, but there's something still here. And that really scared us.
Okay. And she was able to identify the problem?
She told us this really takes a really strange turn, not just saying you're in a house, there's unfinished business, someone, was tied to the house and he's moving on. The level of artifacts that my friend had collected almost acted as an amplifier for some of the paranormal activity, because they were from all cultures and from all around the world. There was one particular artifact that was of the troublesome nature that my friend wanted to warn us about. It was something he found in Peru. It was something that was dug up probably from a farmer found it, and it was from a tomb. And this farmer had this object. My friend spent many different times down in South America, and even with his family on trips to Mexico, the Yucatan, and in Peru and in Guatemala. And this farmer sold my friend this artifact. And my friend, the way that Laurie explained to us, because she was getting the images from my friend to see how this all came about, and she started drawing this figure. But she said, it's like your friend's got the money. Here's this wealthy American who's got the money to buy things, and here's this farmer who found this object. He wants to get rid of it, and he sells it to your friend. Your friend doesn't know exactly what he has, and he's buying it, and he's bringing it back with him from South America, and then he spent time to study it, but did not know the power behind it. And one thing, after our medium came out of the trance, he said to me, I am almost convinced, Anita, that this object, because it's so powerful, and now you guys have it because you cleaned out his closet and it was supposedly there. He said, it emits an energy that your friend is very afraid of, that it's open portals in his house and is causing a lot of problems. And he said, the nature of it is not of this earth. And my friend did say that to us. I said, well, what's this object? There's like hundreds of artifacts we're finding, and we don't know what we even have. And he said, it's not of this world. Well, you could have hit me with, a ton of bricks and it would have been lighter than being hit with that fact. Like, what are you talking about? And I looked at Laurie and the rest of the group and I said, what is he talking about? Like, what are we dealing with here? This is so crazy and unexpected. I'm dealing with ghosts over here. Now you're telling me what? Aliens? I've got an alien object that I need to deal with? And Laurie said to me, yes, Anita, it's not of this earth. And this is the drawing. So she drew it, a picture of it. She said, do you remember coming across something that looks like that? And I said, not that I'm aware of. I mean, we came across a lot of artifacts, but I'm not really sure what we have packed away. And she said, it's very powerful. It opens portals. She said, that's what your friend's really afraid of, that he should have gotten rid of it when he knew what this thing could be emitting. Now he knows that he's crossed over what this thing really was all about. And that's why he's trying to tell you. But now you are dealing with it. What are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea. I said, you are giving me things here that I'm not equipped to handle. I don't know what I'm dealing with, and I need you guys to help me out. And she said, well, we will, we'll be in constant touch with you, but you need to finish getting this house, packed up and get out of here, because it's now with you. She said, you could get rid of the rest of the things in this house, which 95% is gone now at this point in October when they came, and we had actually sold the house by the end of October to a contractor who was going to gut the place and remodel the house. She said, the things that you brought from your house, brought it, from this house to your house, you now have that problem. She said, I'm hoping it doesn't get any worse, but let us know if anything happens.
Okay, so
yeah.
So half of the stuff that you'd taken out had moved quite a lot of activity into your house, but you still had activity in his house, yes?
Well, there was nothing happening at my house at the time that we were bringing things over. It was because I had a pretty much of an empty basement, and I said, I can't afford to put this in a couple storage units. There's so much stuff. So let me pack it in the basement. I have the room. Then I'll have the chance to go through things at my own time. Once we get everything out of the house for the contractor, we had a certain date to be out of there, and signing with the lawyer, getting the house sold. I said, then we'll deal with it. But I did not know at the time, while I was bringing those objects over to my house, I'm creating a haunting situation in my house now. And it was
you're bringing over a little extra on
Anita, let me jump in for a clarification question. How long ago was this?
This was 8 years ago.
2009, wasn't it?
2009.
2009. Okay. So these objects, because he was an archaeologist, he was collecting objects from around the world. Now, this object from South America, do you know where it was from in South America?
It was from Peru.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, and we're not sure if it was close to, the capital, like Cusco, or there's like nothing written down about finding these things. It was just this object that they were picking up on, and it changes. It's a shapeshifter. It changes colors. It changes shapes to protect itself. It does not want to be found. And I thought, well, that's convenient. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, to go for this? But Laurie was very adamant, and I was not even really believing it. I said, oh yeah, come on. Like, are we sure that this is what this is all about? And she said, well, all I can hope is that, you don't have any problems at your house. But if this is what this is, and it is powerful, she said, I really don't know. I don't think it's over for you, Anita. You're leaving here, but you don't know what you've brought to your house. So that's the way it was left, back in October. And then in 2 months' time, of December, it was Christmas Eve, we started having poltergeist activity in my house. It hadn't really manifested at all. And all of a sudden, on Christmas Eve, we're having paranormal activity in my house. And the other house had been closed up. It was, as I said, we shut the door on that place. It was given over to contractors. They were busy, gutting the place and cleaning out whatever debris else that they could do. But that really, it concerned me. But yet you're like in the back of your mind saying, I wonder if this is really true. I mean, how could this really be what they're saying? Yeah.
But before we leave Paul's house and go over to your house, you said about the medium or one of the team identifying portals in the house. How many portals did she identify? Because you didn't say portal, you said portals.
Well,
where were they?
Well, there was a main portal was in the basement, and we weren't sure the direction. When she told us later, it made sense because we had been in my friend's bedroom where those Tupperware bins have been thrown. Right below his bedroom floor was where there was a wardrobe, and that's where the portal. That was where she said the portal was. And that made sense that we were getting from a certain area of his room seemed to be activity. And so when she pointed out the portal in the basement, which was strong, but then later she told me the portal in your house now is much stronger. Actually, we have several portals. But in his place, there was definitely the one in the basement, which was really connected to go straight up to his bedroom. And then I think that's pretty much where she felt the strongest.
Did she see anything at any point? Did she herself see anything?
Well, she was sitting on a couch, and she could have a direct sight into the dining room. She said that she jumped up from the chair after Paul supposedly, we had led him to the light and trying to get everybody back into focus, back into real time. She jumps up from the couch. She goes, I just saw something that scared the hell out of me. I said, what, Laurie? What did you just say? She said, I saw a gray 2-foot high creature scurry from one wall to the next. And she said, it scared the hell out of me. And she said, I'm going to tell you something else. I said, well, do you have holy water on you? Can you do something with this? And, you have prayers. She said, let me tell you about that. As soon as I walked into his house, I'm carrying holy water with me right now, she told me. I have it in my little satchel. The voice said to me in a very mocking tone, your holy water is not going to do you any good. We don't recognize your Christian values. So it's like, what? She said, no. She said, the holy water is not going to do any good here, Anita. They're older than Christianity. She said, you have to understand this. This is what we're dealing with. There's entities here that either don't recognize, or if they're from another dimension, they don't apply to the laws that we believe in here. So it took me a gradual understanding for what she was telling me, then to do my own research to understand, because when you're not studying this, people are just telling you these things, and now I need to find out for myself or understand it. What's the story behind this? What's the history that this would be happening in this house? And as I said, my friend would have been the last person to want to call any kind of bad things to happen to me. And in a way, he's become a guardian. That they did say to me, he's going to be watching out for me. Because of where he is now, he has the capability of protecting me, in a better way than he did when he was earthbound. But also, there was another problem at the house. My friend's father was there also. He had died in 93, and we didn't know we were picking up more of a familial type of family members, but Laurie said to me, I'm picking up about 7 spirits right now, Anita. Some of them are family members. They come in and out to visit because this was a home that they visited. But she said, there's other things here that I'm not quite sure, what exactly we're picking up. But she said the father was upset with the things going from the house. They were very tied to the house and possessions. And there was kind of a thing going on for my friend and his father. My friend still wanted to please his father, even in the afterlife. And it's like he didn't want to make excuses for the father, but he was there to be a buffer because he knew what his father was capable of doing. And that was more things that we discovered about the father and the family that took us into another whole different road of discovery. So,
Anita, I'm just going to have to point out here that for some reason, this does not happen to me very often. I'm just getting hit left and right with my own impressions, just popping into my head during this interview of things that are happening. I knew when you said that artifact in South America, I knew right away it was Peru. Just knew it.
Wow.
And I think I have some ideas on around where it was found because of I'm very interested in what's going on down there. A lot of the megalithic sites, and there's that one archway in Peru that was supposed to be a gateway and carved out of the stone rock.
Yes.
And these
I know that. I've studied that. Yes.
Opening these interdimensional portals. And so what you were possibly dealing with, at least the impressions I'm getting so far, is definitely interdimensional, not ghosts. At least some of them are not ghosts. Did you ever, in all this time, ever find the items that she was mentioning? I know you said it was shape-shifting. You had trouble. You didn't know what it was, but did you ever find it?
No, it is still in a hidden mode. We've had some near hits we thought that could have been possibly the shapes, but with activity still happening, that while we had found some daggers or bayonets from World War II. My friend's father was German. They were German. And when we found these bayonets, they had been packed away right at the very beginning of being in his house, and didn't think much of them because, well, we'll put them aside and we'll deal with it later. But our friend Bill Bean, when I told him that, I said, I forgot all about these things were packed away. And I had a dream that I should be looking for these again. And he said, well, I don't think this is a good thing, these metal objects. And he said, my impression is that they were something that, was used to murder people, because they're objects of war. And when he came he came last year purposely to see these things and to bind and seal them. And then they are now locked in a safe that away from the house, that we don't want anything to do with these things right now.
Anita, we're now in your house, aren't we?
Yes, we're back in my house, and the bayonets have been brought here. And as I said, a lot of things, there were so much at the beginning, we weren't aware of what the significance of a lot of the things were. We just packed them away, labeled it, because the task was just never ending. But now we realize these bayonets were kind of a symbol of the evil that was being brought to my house with some of the artifacts. And to get to your point, Mark, we're not really sure this thing is still present in the basement, but at times it fluctuates. It seems to be very dormant, and then things get more hot again or activated. And that's when we have portals, they open again in the house. And Bill Bean's been here about 5-6 times to seal portals and to do what he can. But he tells us, because of the nature of the artifact and things that we still have in the basement, even though we're trying to get rid of some of the things, they don't want us to get rid of the stuff because we get attacked. And I got attacked in January of this year two big scratches on my stomach. I still have a scar on my stomach that when we attempt to move these things, they are really unhappy that this stuff is getting moved or that we're even now talking about it. When my first book came out, I figured, all right, I wrote this book and this should be, what I'm putting this to rest. But as I was writing the book, things were happening in my house. So as I'm writing my first book, I'm taking notes of everything that's happening in my house while I'm writing the first book, because I'm writing the second book at the same time. Because I knew the first book, I had to produce that and just make an ending to it after we left his house, and then start at my house, because I got an agent and she had said, do you think you would have combined both books? I said, no. I said, I want to get the first book out because it's going to take me a while to research what I've been finding. It's going to be in the second book. And I really don't want to delay the publishing of the first book, which was very well received. And of course, Haunting asked us that they want to do an episode. But yeah, Mark, it really deals with the evil that we feel has been pretty much present, has to do with my friend's father's background. And when we had the medium come to us and say, the father's here or has been connected with the son, but do you know who he is? And I said, well, I know that I found some things I shouldn't have found, but because I'm the only one here, I'm going to find them. And I found my friend's father's book under a rug, and it was a Nazi black book with a gold insignia of the Nazi swastika, and in it was a weir pass, which was something a military man would carry during World War II. So it would be like his own passport to take him back and forth through the provinces or the countries. And my friend did not tell me his father was in the service in World War II. I knew he was a little bit older. He mentioned something one time that he had been in the Navy, and I didn't equate that with like SS or Gestapo. But as it turns out, a neighbor happened to get in touch with me through her letter going to my friend's address. Everything there was getting forwarded to me as the executor. She did not know he passed away. When I got her letter, I then wrote to her and sent her a copy of the obituary. I planned his memorial funeral, and he was cremated, and his ashes were spread out west by the lawyer because they wanted me to go, but I was in the middle of taking care of my parents. I said, no, I can't stop everything and go out west and drop his ashes on top of a mountain. I'm sorry. The lawyer was going to Aspen, Colorado. So I said, I think that's good enough if you want to do that for me, because I can't do this right now. And when that was happening, that there's no place that we know that we could finally memorialize to him, but the father's connection with my friend, he was not really kind to my friend when they were growing up. My friend was a brilliant man, and the father always had harsh words for him. And I know this by knowing the family, that my friend would be very upset sometimes and call me. And he says, I'm never going to please my father, no matter what I do and how successful, because he tended to favor the older brother for some reason. But what we found out is by this military connection, this neighbor said to me, she called me after I mailed her all these things that she would maybe want to keep. She thanked me, and in the process of a conversation, I just said, well, my friend was very proud of his heritage, and he spoke German fluently. And then out of the blue, the woman said, well, his father was SS, don't you, Anita? I said, no. I said I didn't know that. I said I wouldn't even think that or even ask that. But she says, well, I know from firsthand, my mother and his mother were very good friends. They're both from Europe after World War II, and they became friends because his mother was a very wonderful seamstress, and her mother was too, and they bonded as neighbors and as people that created beautiful clothing. And one day when his mother knew that this woman and her mother were moving out of the state, and the mother was quite elderly and she had to take her mother with her, my friend's mother, Mrs. Yeager, said, I want to apologize for the Holocaust and for what happened in World War II, because this woman and her mother were Jewish. And that's why this woman said to me, she said, we always knew there was something really mysterious about his father and knew about this kind of connection, but nobody would speak out loud. It was just a known thing. And she said, she said, I don't know if you knew this, but maybe this will make sense to you in some ways. And I just was floored, by getting that information. And then things started making sense on hiding this military book under the carpet, some photographs I had come across, which then had given to the brother, but I remembered how strange a few of them were with like military outfits, and the father was in a group of men with long coats and these hats that I knew from the insignia was SS, that after I was looking this up online, and I thought, oh my God, I go, look, what did we get ourselves into here? And there was this agitation of the father for me finding this stuff out in the house at my friend's house, knowing that then I was writing this down, and he did not want this exposed. But we would have left it if he did not come after us. But while we were at our house here, things started happening with a German accented type of like noises and things being spoken to us with German accents and things of a really bad nature that are related to like World War II and the Holocaust, that we could not ignore this fact that this evil of Nazism was carried beyond the grave. And it then extended into our world, our house. And my son, particularly my son, was then being visited, if you could believe this, and I write this in the second book. After we found out my friend's father, the actual group he probably was in, because he was Navy and he was of this secret group that did the bidding behind the scenes, and actually there was murder of men, women, and children maybe involved. After that, my son starts getting these dreams of people coming to him that are Nazi SS officers. And 3 different times these men came to my son. My son would write a name down and a date or some numbers. And just nonchalantly, one morning in our house, he came downstairs after the night and said to me, there's this guy's name that he told me his name and he gave me this information. And he said he worked with your friend's father. And I said, well, what do you mean? You mean, you know, in the United States, or they worked together maybe at a job? He goes, I don't know. He said, he just told me he worked with him. And he said, he gave me his name. So I didn't really think much of it, and I wasn't really keen on how to Google it. I was not technically that adept, 8 years ago, doing too much with Google. So my son, we let this go for a week or so, and he said, did you ever look up this name? It's like hard even saying his name. Martin Sandberger was the name, and there's a date. And my son says, oh, well, look, I'll look it up on Google if you're not really sure. And so he looked up, and then he sees this name pop up. And then he Googles further, and the man had just passed away only like a month or 2 before this man visited my son. And the date was exactly the date my son gave me, 3/30/98, I think it was. I'll look at my notes. But he died on the 30th of March, 2010, and he was 98 years old. So I said to my son, you're kidding me. This guy, he said, yeah, Mom, he was a bad dude. He's an SS guy, and he was responsible for killing children because he was a doctor and they experimented on his children. He said, but he just died, and he didn't die in prison. He was a free man when he died. So that was like the first start. And I said, I don't know what we've got here, Chris. I said, I'm not sure of what's happening, but we wrote it down and we put it aside, and I put it in my notes. And then a few weeks later, another person came to my son, and his name was Joachim Sewering. My son had one letter wrong, Sewing, I think he wrote down, and it turned out his name was Seying. And he looked up his name. He had just died 7 days before he visited my son and told him who he was, and there was information on that also. And my son looked up recently deceased people in like Europe, and that guy's name came up, and he was also like 96 years old, and there was things connected with numbers my son wrote down that were accurate. And then there was several other very strange dreams. But we were getting contacted by former Nazi officers who had just died, and they had died at old age, and they were contacting my son. And my son said, what is going on? So we called on to Laurie and her team, and she emailed me back, and she said, the medium we called Randy in the book, she says, I'm going to let him know this. And she said, I want your son to talk to him and maybe get some protection for him to say maybe before he sleeps, because this is not good that this is happening. And it continued that he was trying to relieve his mind, not think of these things. But these historical figures were coming to my son, very, like, some of them were just out of like nowhere. Like, who is this woman that's coming to you, and what is her deal? Like, why is she contacting you? And it had to do with something directly connected with our house, we thought, because she was saying she had been a caregiver. She had a dead child in her arms, and my son woke up crying because he said the little girl was so cute at 4 years old, but then it turned horrific that she turned into a skeleton right in this woman's arms.
How old was your son at this time?
It's 2010, so he would have been in his late 20s. He's going to be 34 in August. So this was happening in his late 20s. My son was very sensitive when we were at my friend's house. He dealt with bouts of nausea. Sometimes he'd have to run into the bathroom and vomit because he would feel like something was like stabbing him in the stomach, and he felt sick. Or he would get apprehensive as we pulled up to the house, that it would start 2 blocks from the house. He'd start picking up something that, I don't know if they want us there today, but I know we have to be, because we have to deal with this stuff. And that's why when my son got attacked, there was things happening to him and to me that we didn't realize who was doing this to us. And we definitely think now is my friend's father, who threw my son to the ground and actually attacked me, because he said something to Laurie when she made contact in the basement. She picked up on my friend's father was present there, and she said, Anita, he's got really bad designs on you. And she was filled with the most horrible images of death and wanting to strangle her and strangle me. And she, at that point, that was actually covered in the episode, but they changed it around in the haunting. She ran up from the steps with her crew guy, and she said, you can't believe what just happened to me down there. And I said, well, you're pale as anything. Like, she says, well, I'll tell you, I'm not staying here much longer. She says, I feel really sick, and she had red marks on her neck. Something tried to strangle her. And she said, I had actually been down in the basement with her and the other crew guy, that they were taking photographs and filming. And she said, get out of the basement, Anita. I want you upstairs right now. And I said, well, what? I'll stay here. I don't want you guys to be by yourselves here. She goes, no, just don't argue with me. Just get out of here. Go upstairs. And I did. I followed the lead. And my son, who was at the time upstairs with another member of her team, I said, I don't know. Laurie's tapped into something down there, and she's really afraid. And then when she came up, she said, you had to get out of there, Anita. He was coming after you, and he was coming after me. And she said, it's really powerful. She said, the father he did not leave your friend's house. He's here, and he's not happy with any of the things that you're writing about. And she said, he's a conduit for things that are coming here through your son. They recognize him as one of their fellow compadres or people in World War II. So they feel comfortable coming here because he's here. He's drawing them here, that they are earthbound spirits. And I said, well, is there anything we could do to get rid of them? She said, well, they don't want to face the music. First of all, they're not acknowledging what they did was wrong in World War II, that they were responsible for killing innocent lives. She said, so they're not going to rectify that at all by admitting the blame or responsibility. So they're destined to remain earthbound because they will not move on. They don't want to face judgment because they know that they feel what they did was right. And they still, when they took it to the grave, they believe that they were in the right, what they did. And that's a horrifying conclusion to draw from, to realize that even when you leave this life, you're carrying such negativity and such evil that, and just from you not acknowledging your role in playing in this horrific time in history, that they're destined as punishment because they will not acknowledge that they're just, hanging around, and the portal brought them through. We get times where we feel that they're not here, but then there are other times when you can feel that there is a presence. Bill Bean has picked it up, that it was a horrific kind of dark energy he picked up when he went to the basement with the daggers. And it's been relieved quite a bit since the daggers are no longer here, because that kind of anchored them. But my son still gets some strange dreams that one of the officers came to him and said, you think I'm out of here, and he's in a hospital gown running around outside, and he's saying, this is where, and my son said he saw a pizza paddle, but it had Havertown crematorium on it or something. He goes, I can't believe the images I keep getting. He said that they won't let this rest. They just believe that, that they could come to him and give them messages. But we constantly try to get the place cleansed with Bill Bean. We have our protection, we have our holy water, our black salt. But it's the idea that all this is still carried from the other house over here because of my connection and my son's connection with the house and the artifacts, I guess.
And do you know whether the other house now is clean or whether there is still problems going on there?
Well, we know that it's changed hands 3 times, but they said there's not supposed to be anything wrong. We know that when the house was sold to a couple from out of state, and they weren't supposed to stay that long anyway because the man was being transferred in 2 years. So they came into a new house. Then the house was rented for, I think, a year. And then it's now to new owners where I don't hear anything to the contrary, which is funny because I have actually a spy, if you could call it. She's a neighbor from the back of my friend's house, and she's been good enough. Like, she gets in touch with me a couple times a year, and I'll ask her, how's everything? Well, your friend would have been really upset. They cut down this tree and they put this backyard patio in. I go, well, it's their house now. These other people, he's got nothing to do with it. But she gets a little sad because he was very close to her after his mom died, that she was an older lady, and he would go over for tea or breakfast and talk to her about, it wasn't a really happy childhood that he had with his father. And now knowing what the father was all about and realizing how strict and the kind of, company he kept, years before that, I don't think my friend in some way measured up to his father's expectations in some way. And that's sad because my friend was a kind, brilliant man, and that's the father's loss for not realizing, what a great person he was. But he was very devoted to his mother. He and his mother were very, very close. And I think at times he stayed because it wasn't really a great atmosphere at the house sometimes between the husband and wife. And unfortunately, my friend found himself in the middle at times with maybe the conflict between a husband and wife. And that would be also something he called me about, that he was unhappy that he had to be there because he thought he could protect his mother maybe in some way. And that's sad because the father passed away and he still stayed to take care of his mother and did not really, scope out a life for himself pretty much that was tied to the house. And there's a lot of unfulfilled. Yeah, there's a lot of unfulfilled things that he wanted to be down in Guatemala years ago. It was canceled, the grant that he was supposed to go down because it was too dangerous for Americans with the guerrilla warfare that was going down at the time. They couldn't guarantee his safety to any of the Americans going down. So that was hard for him to take because he needed to do some more research on the Mayan Indians. So then he wrote, he wrote his thesis, he did things, he got his master's degree, and he was able to do some associate professorship with, Native American. And in fact, he called me, he was out west, and he was quite happy that he was first disappointed because of Guatemala. Then he was sent down to the southwestern portion of the United States, and he was in Utah. They were covering an old, settlers town, and he says, oh boy, he says, now I got to do. He wasn't into early American stuff like the Western settlers. He wanted native culture. So it happened to be that they hit an Indian burial ground under the town. So he was quite excited that it turned out to be Native American.
So he was in his element.
Yeah, he was excited. So.
Going back to your house now. Mm-hmm. What with the entity or the dark energy that Bill Bean picked up and the stuff your son was dreaming about, the Nazi officers and God knows what else. Mm-hmm. What else was happening in your house? Is there any other entities, or were you seeing any shadow people or?
Yes, we've had which was portrayed in the episode. For a haunting, we had a shadow man that appeared in the hallway. The way my house is laid out, the front door in the hallway, then from there you can go into other rooms. And I'm in the living room watching television, and I have a clear sight from my chair right into the center hallway where there's a set of steps that goes upstairs and there's the front door. Well, I'm sitting there one night, my son was out, and all of a sudden I see a 6 foot at least high shadow man with a brimmed hat on, and he's just sort of moving slowly right in the hallway. And I'm like looking at this and go, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And all I could think was, hi, leave me alone, and don't bother me, please. And he just drifted off and went right through the front door. And I bolted from the chair, and I'm looking, I go, I don't believe what I just saw. There's a shadow man and I called my son and I said, you can't believe what just happened to me. I said, I hope you get home soon, because I was really frightened. And that was strange, because I saw that. My son then gets a dream of a man coming to him, and this was portrayed in the episode, of a man in our backyard. And my son says to the man, this is our home and you're trespassing. What are you doing in our backyard? And the man had these dirty overalls on. What they didn't do in the episode, he should have had a brimmed hat on. But my son said this man was in the backyard. He's got a brim hat from the sun, like a sun hat. He's got overalls, and he has this big black dog next to him, almost looks like a wolf, and he's holding on to him. And the man just said to him, he said, that those people next door, these people are renting the house next to us, and they had 2 dogs. And he said to my son, you tell those people to get those 2 pipsqueaks from stop barking at my beauty, like my dog, because these dogs are incessantly barking. I said, oh my God, I don't know what these dogs are seeing, but they're barking all the time at I have a closed tree out in the back, and there's a shed, and the dogs would be looking in one direction all the time, and they're barking and barking. And my son said, well, now I know why they're barking, Mom. There's a guy back there with this dog. He said, I don't know what they're picking up, but he was stunned that this man appeared to him. And I said, well, I wonder if it's related to the shadow man that we saw. Then he has another dream as it proceeds, and I'm trying to find out something about the history of the house and who the owners were. I knew some things, and I needed to discover more. Went through some of our historical archives in our county. And then my son said the man came back to him again, and he seemed to be kind of agitated and sad at the same time, because my son said, what are you doing here? And he said something about, he mentioned a family name, and that they were his, they're mine now. And Chris said to me, Mom, he's mentioning these people. And I said, I don't know, I'm going to Google this name. And we Googled the name of the Oatman family. And it turns out they were massacred by Apache Indians out west in the 1850s. And he said, they're mine now. And my son said, I don't know why Oatman is coming to us, or there's a mine named after them, and then they were massacred. But what my son found was this woman with a tattoo on her chin, that this Oatman woman, she was a girl when the Indians attacked and massacred her family. She and her sister were captives of these Indians. They tattooed her on the chin so that she would be the property of that tribe. Well, years later, she's rescued. Her sister had died in the meantime, and she's rescued by the army, the cavalry, and she got back into civilized life. But she was always marked by this blue tattoo on her chin. Yeah. Well, ironically, my son and I were watching an American TV show, and it was about the railroads back in the 1800s. And there was a woman character on the show who had been saved by the Indians, and she had the blue tattoo on her chin. And when I first watched the show, I said to my son, I remember reading in my American history books on the American Indians, there was a woman who had that tattoo on her chin, and I think that's where they got the idea for this character on the show, and her name was Olive Oatman. So I said that to my son. We were just talking about, the Hell on Wheels TV show about the American Railroad, and I said, I mentioned to you, and this is the woman that you're coming up with in your dream. And that was very strange that we picked up that name. Then the man comes to him again, finally says to him, I used to live here, but I went to jail for murder. And my son said that just chilled him to the bone. And he goes, Mom, you've got to see if you can find something about the early history. He said, he told me he murdered somebody, that he went to jail for a crime.
How did he get that information? How did he hear that voice? In a dream, or? Yes,
in a dream. He actually was just having a conversation with my son and said to him, this, because my son says, like, why are you still here? He said, this used to be my house. I used to live here. And, but until I went to jail for murder. And so my son said to me, see if you can pick up anything. Well, I happened to be researching in between all this orphan records because my son was seeing children also in the house. And this woman who was a caretaker of these children. And that was like from the Victorian times. So I found there was a couple of names that were young children that passed away on the property. But it also, going through the records, don't I find something about in the 1900s, there was the man who was arrested for murdering his wife on this property, this John Stanton. And that's the road that we live on, Stanton Road. This is all the Stanton family property. And he went to jail in the 1900s. After that, the house fell into ruin. And by 1922, this whole property was just down to the ground, just a foundation of an old farmhouse. And people would walk by, not linger on the property. All the kids would like come and play on the property, look for, rabbits and things like that. But nobody built anything on the property until 1947 when they built my house. So there's been a long history of several hundred years on the property from the 1700s with Welsh settlers back then. And it was the Lewis family farm. Then it became the Stanton family farm. And we've always are finding artifacts on the property. My son just dug up. We had a patio dug and all the debris was put into a pile in our backyard. And we've been digging through it. And we found a clay pipe, part of a clay pipe that is from the 1800s. We find pottery, we find glass, we find a silver spoon. We found a lot of things dating from the 1800s, especially because I've studied some archaeology. I've done ceramics and pottery. So I recognize what is a piece of pottery and what's not. And it's been an incredible thing that Bill Bean told us our place is like an onion. He keeps peeling back the layers and layers that are here. And things are running into each other. Like when I brought the objects into my house, Laurie Hull said it best. She said, Anita, things were dormant here. You've had a lot of living and dying on this property for centuries. But when you brought this stuff in, all hell broke loose because
that's what I was just going to say to you,
Yeah.
When you brought all this stuff in, this is also more than likely what opened your son up.
Yeah, yes. And the experience at my friend's house. He's always had some abilities. Now that I see what he used to tell me when he was a little child, like he had a secret playmate and invisible friend, or then he had he used to be scared at times when he was really young, and he said the lady's looking at me. And I go, what do you mean, lady? So I had a portrait hanging in my hallway that I had painted of a Renaissance lady. I took it down thinking that's what he was seeing, but it wasn't. Now we realize we have a female ghost here. She's our caretaker. She's from the 1800s. Her name is Marjorie. That's what Laurie Holt tells me. And she leaves me gifts, which is a whole other thing. But I get actually knitted pieces of fabric that she leaves for me as presents. And it started in 2010. I have over a dozen pieces, and they look like mourning jewelry that people used to weave with the loved ones' hair and make jewelry out of it. So I get this really unusual woven thing that's left for me. It could be on my bed. It's in the bathroom. It's on my steps. It's outside. It's in my dining room.
Honestly, Anita, you're lucky because I've got 3 ghosts in this place. They don't leave me a blasted thing. They just take anything they want.
Well, one actually threw a Morgan silver dollar against our bathroom wall upstairs. That actually is the beginning of the second book. On Christmas Eve, we were getting some crazy activity, but we still needed to get ready to go to my parents' house for Christmas Eve because with Italians, Christmas Eve is a big deal. And we needed to get the presents together. And a friend was coming over. We needed to meet her there. So I didn't have time for ghosts, but my poor son is trying to go into the bathroom to shave. And I see a shadow thing follow him into the bathroom, throw his shaver down the steps. And my son is so angry because it's fallen apart. And he goes, what is going on over here? And I said, well, they're throwing junk around. I said, your shaver. I said, they threw other stuff that's like just nonsense because we had heard a big bang on the tile in the bathroom before he went to go shave. And I said, oh, look, it's a coin. But it was a car wash token from way, it was really, really old because it didn't even have an area code on the name of the car wash, which, they didn't do that. They switched that, I think, in the 70s or 80s. So I said, yeah, but it's not real gold. It's just a car wash token. So my son said, yeah, they're cheap ghosts. They can't even throw anything of value if they're going to throw a coin. Well, about 5-10 minutes later, we hear this big bang again in the bathroom, and there's a Morgan silver dollar. That's on the carpet. I said, well, they heard us. We told them that they were being cheap, and now they're throwing something that's valuable. So, yeah, they hear everything that goes on here. They answer us. There's really intelligent haunting, and it's like I don't even believe it sometimes when I talk about it that this is all happening in the last 8 years. It's just crazy.
Yeah, well, if you get about 14 pairs of glasses, including sunglasses, and about 20 lighters, can I have them back, please? I say, my stuff gets taken. I don't get gifts. They take stuff.
Okay.
Just tell them to come over to my place and start throwing $100 bills at me. I won't complain. Really, I won't.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? Well, they've taken money out of the house. We do not keep cash in the house because I put money like in an envelope, just set it aside for a person's gift. And when I've gone back, it's just gone, and nobody knew it was even in the drawer. There's actually a drawer in my studio where I am now. I cannot keep anything of value in that drawer because it disappears in that drawer. It's like an empty void. And we're talking about not just we've had some serious money disappear that we keep hoping it comes back, and things. Oh, I have earrings. They like my earrings. I have gold earrings. They're the loop kind, and they'll take off an earring. I don't even know it's been taken off, and they snap. I have pierced ears, so they really snap tight that I wear these earrings. And there's an earring gone for me on my right ear. My son said to me, "Mom, you're a pirate today. There's only one earring on your ear." I go, "Oh my God, I lost my earring." Like, I don't know what happened.
I've just had the vision of all these ghosts walking around in earrings.
They're playing hide and seek with me. And I don't see this earring for a week or two. And I say to my mom, who had passed away, "Mom, I really love these earrings. If they're doing this I said, I don't know if I lost this, but if it was taken, could you have them return it to me?" So a few days later, I'm going into my handbag, which was my mom's handbag. It was a summer handbag that I kept because it was so lovely. I open in the bag to get a set of keys and the earrings inside the handbag. Oh, and it's closed. The earring's closed. So if it would have been open, you say, well, the earring fell into your handbag. No, it's closed, the earring. So how did that get off my ear, closed, and it's in the handbag? Then they did it again with another pair of gold earrings that I found it off my right ear again. I go, oh, here we go again. Really? Do you need to do this? And I thought, well, Mom, you got them to return the first earring. Could you have them return this earring too? Because I know I'm not even going to bother tear the house apart looking for this earring. I just know that they took it. So my son calls me from his store. He has a miniature hobby store about 15 minutes away, not far from where my friend's house used to be, by the way. And he calls me. He said, "Mom, I reached in my pocket for a tissue and something stabbed me in the fingernail." He said, "It was your earring. Your earring is in my pocket." I said, "Well, at least I got my earring back." But he was stunned. He says, "I go in my pocket and your earring's inside my pocket." And I said, "Well, that's just typical. We have weird things going on all the time because there's got to be, well, we have more than just a couple ghosts in here. We have people that come for a little bit and then they leave. It's like a sort of a bus station, we call it. They arrive, then they stay a little bit, then they leave, and then somebody else comes. And yeah, but we have to take it. Our biggest defense is not allowing it to scare us, intimidate us. We use a sense of humor. We don't try to laugh as mocking them. We laugh at the absurdity that we find ourselves in at this point. And that's our best defense. We have a strong faith. We know right from wrong. We know that there could be very tortured souls that need our help, and we're willing to do that if they need that. But we take it in stride because we lead very busy lives. I mean, I am a working artist. I'm an author. I work with my agent, doing book covers for other clients. My son runs a hobby store. I help him there. And then I still do my artwork and antique dolls, and then, and then I'm working on a documentary for a dear friend of mine for her husband who passed away 15 years ago, and he was a wonderful composer from Philadelphia. So we're doing that too. It's like I'm too busy to deal like ghosts. Just get an afterlife. I got things to do, and I don't want to be
just get an afterlife. I like that one. Just get an afterlife. Can I ask you one more question?
Okay.
The negative energy that Bill Bean talks about. What do you think that's all about?
I think it's still tied with the Nazi problem that we've had.
You don't think it's with this mysterious shape-shifting object?
I think they have drawn energy from that it's actually been told to Laurie. She said the father has it, or he knows where it is, but he would never let us get it because it's the strength that he finds he needs to keep here, in between the planes of existence, I guess. And I can believe some of that. I said to Laurie, I said, I understand what you're saying. I said, but it's like the act of trying to find this and actually get rid of things, it starts the activity that can be very harmful. Thus, my son being attacked on New Year's Eve of this past year, he's in our store down the basement, and a chair that was folded next to the wall. He and a friend were down in the basement getting some inventory, and the chair levitated off the ground. His friend saw it and smashed into my son, threw him to the ground. And then 3 days later, I'm attacked on my stomach with 3-inch-long scratches that bled. I didn't even feel it, and I still have a scar on my stomach. And that's when Bill Bean arrived here in January, ASAP. He came up, he said, this is not good. And something just aggravated things again. He goes, what have you guys been doing? I go, well, moving things in the basement, trying to make a plan to get rid of things and store some things and put them up on auction. He goes, well, I guess that's the answer. He said, they are really upset that you're moving anything from downstairs. I said, so what do I do? So I'm in a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of mood. And it's we're writing a third book. My son is writing his experiences from his point of view, and also what continues to go on. One thing we do not do is having different groups of people coming in here and think that they're going to solve our problem. We have just a central group that works with us and Bill Bean, because I've had offers all the time of people wanting to come here. They think they're going to solve the problem in a couple hours, or they're going to get some new priest or demonologist over here when Bill Bean tells us what we actually need to know. And I have to say to them, I can't have too many things come in or activities coming in here provoking, because you will leave and we're going to be left with the aftermath to deal with, because we live here, and we can't live like that, with having all this stuff revved up, maybe antagonized, but yet we know that at some point there's going to have to be some kind of reckoning or full-blown all-out siege to get it cleared maybe once and for all. But also the fact that maybe it will never leave, that it could be a continuing thing. Right now it's been pretty peaceful, last few months. We have little things that happen just to let us know, okay, I'm here. Let me take down my sun catchers are off the wall, off the windows again. That happens all the time. Or something gets thrown. Oh, here's a penny just got thrown, or whatever. But they want you to know that
there's nothing big at the moment.
Not that we want that to happen, but I've been threatened actually on air when I did a radio show from California last year or 2 years ago, and that transcripts in the second book. And there was people with German accents were saying in German, and other saying that they were threatening me. They're going to throw acid in my face. That they called me all kinds of names. They cursed me out. They cursed my son.
And was this listeners?
No, this was last year on a show that was actually picked up on the radio show, the interview that we caught all these EVPs.
But who was saying?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, who was saying that to you?
They were EVPs on the show.
No, it was a man and a woman with German accents that were saying these things to us. Now you don't know if it's certain people or if they're demons or other creatures using, imitating. So we have to be very careful, even with the children that pose over here, if they're not something else. So we're not fooled. They want maybe to take you into their confidence or you feel sorry for them. We've been made very aware that it could be other manifestations to trick us, so we're ever vigilant to understand, well, okay, there might be some children that are still earthbound here because children did live on this property, but we're also careful to make sure that they're not disguised something else, that which is,
Anita, I'm going to
be vigilant.
I'm going to interrupt because I'm going to get into some details here because my analytical tech side of me is asking these questions. Now, you're saying these voices came through. They came through on the recording while you were doing the radio show. Is that what you were saying?
That's right.
Were they heard at the time, or was this something that came out later?
Yes, it was heard by the people in the chat room. They were alerting the host of the show the things that were coming through, and it was more than one person was hearing the same things. Then she sent me the transcript. She sent me the link, and my son then heard it himself with he didn't hear the show that night. So he heard it a day later just to listen to the broadcast again. And he wrote down his impressions, and almost to a T, like the exact sentences he was writing down or the words were what people had picked up and put that actually was on the chat room. This was all being validated and written down by people sending the messages to our host. And actually the host's producer was getting weird stuff going on during the production that never happened before either. And that was actually one of the strangest things, because we've got such very distinct things relating to the show. One said, don't believe her about this doll, because I have a doll from Peru that supposedly gets a high energy reading when you put a meter next to it. My friend took it back as a souvenir, but they mentioned the doll. They mentioned these things on the EVPs that said, she's lying, don't believe her. And they mentioned Laurie, the psychic, and other things that you knew they were talking about me and the show, and they were letting us know that they heard it. So it was strange.
Now, how long ago was that show?
That was almost 2 years ago, because I wrote that in the book. That was May 18th, either 2000, was it 15 or 16? Because I've done several shows for her after that. But I have that, it's in the second book, my second book, Dark Transference. I actually have a chapter on that, what actually happened, and actually have we have that plus my son, automatic writing. He's typing up a chapter of the second book working with me, and he's typing on his laptop as I'm dictating notes to him. And then he said to me, well, I got this all in an outline form, Mom. I wrote this all down, so I'll send it to you on email. It's a Word document, and then you copy it and check it, and if you can then start working on that fully, to make it more refined in the chapter. When I opened up the document, this was in this was June of 2015. Yeah, because the book came out this last year. It was 2014, June 2014. He wrote, there was stuff that was written in between the notes that I gave him. They started putting curse words in between. There was my friend's father's name came up. My friend's name came up. Then it was cursing at me. They were taking words like, say, I was dictating a sentence to him about something that happened in our living room. They then changed it to dead room. So as my son was typing, he did not know this was happening to him. He's just doing it a flow. There wasn't where he stopped and started adding stuff. It was just in the flow as he's writing this. They changed words from dead room, from living room to love seat. Like we had something fly off into the love seat. They said hate seat. They mentioned the Holocaust, about burning people. And at the end it was 6 lines of sentences of just gobbledygook. It looked like an anagram, but actually was German words mixed in that when I looked up in a German dictionary, it said, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, was repeated on the line. And it said, how fun, die, in between the just alternate letters of the alphabet. And we could see messages in between this. And I have that verbatim in the chapter in my second book, because we still have the raw document. It's on his laptop from June 2014. I sent it to my agent, who was working with me on the second book, and she said, I have no words, Anita. I have no words, that I'm looking at this rough draft and I see all of a sudden it starts changing into someone took over and started infiltrating it. And some of it was downright, some of it actually was comical, the way they used some of the sentences, but some of it was very prejudiced. It was calling names to people. And I said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And my son has no recollection that he changed any of this. He was just typing. And he said to me, Mom, I guess somebody just typed over my hands. He said, I don't recall that I would take the time to go and figure out changing this word, because there was no stopping point. When I was dictating, he's just typing and I'm giving another little couple paragraphs. I will write this down because now I have it all in front of me and I can work from that outline. So it's an incredible type of paranormal experiences that we are witnessing and being part of, that I don't know of anybody else who's had maybe such a variety of strange things that have coincided. I mean, to me, it's like, it's just been every year when I look back and see all the things that have happened to us, it's just so much to take in.
With the activity that you've been experiencing and for the last several years, you mentioned that you had been attacked, you were scratched. How long has it been since you've experienced what you would consider to be really negative activity?
I'd probably say of January of this past year when I got scratched. That was probably the worst. We've had fingerprints on mirrors and on my glass coffee table, and actually on my eyeglasses, if you could believe this. I sat in my chair and I had some friends over 4th of July, and I had new glasses. I just had cleaned the lenses because it was near our smoky grill, and I sat down. And then I was watching television and I thought, why are my glasses smudged again? I took them off and there's 3 tiny fingerprints in a row on my glass on my right side. And I took a picture of it and I showed it to the people they go, what just happened? I go, do you see these little fingerprints on my glasses? That's not me. There's my fingerprint. I'll show you a comparison. But we've gotten very strange looking fingerprints that do not look human on the mirror and on my downstairs mirror. I have photographs of them. Some of them look like children's handprints on my coffee table, and some look like adults, and some have elongated fingers. Some look skeletal almost. So that evokes a negative impression. Like, I don't like seeing these fingerprints on the glass anywhere, because when they can manifest stuff like that, then you're wondering, what am I next? Are they going to imprint on me next? Because they're doing it to the glass and the mirrors and things like that. What we do is we photograph it and document it, and then we wipe it off. We do not keep it on the mirrors and things. But we've actually have a handprint in paint that's on my garage door, the upper floor of the attic garage. And the handprint is still there. And there's the word written Lagos, Lagos, which in Latin I think means Lord. And that was apparently, Laurie said, we had an 8-year-old boy ghost here, was looking for help, and Bill Bean was able to move him on. He's no longer here, but other ones have taken his place. But we have a child's handprint in paint. We were painting the upstairs window. It's black and white. It looks like an old barn window, and it was open. We were painting it to the trim, and my son was painting first the black X, and then he came back to me for the white paint to do the rest of the door. And that only couple of seconds for him to pick up the white paint, he goes over to the wooden door, and there goes, who just did this? And it was from the sticky paint on the X. They hand printed their handprint and then wrote the words on that. So I still have that. I actually have that door. I have not overpainted it. I still have that because that is coming down, that door, in the future. But I'm going to keep the door because that's manifestation of a child ghost did that. And we have a lot of document. We have images of a dark figure in my son's room that's cloaked. He was levitating off the ground. My son snapped it with his cell phone, and it's really disturbing. We try to document and take pictures as much as we can, and that alone could fill a book of just having a pictorial guide to people of a haunting that we're experiencing. And that might be next, either that or put out a DVD, because we have so much evidence recorded.
How many, in this time in your home, how many different entities do you think you're dealing with?
Well, let me see. Marjorie hasn't revealed herself lately, but we feel that that's a protective presence. We feel that things could be worse here, but something is preventing that.
Is that just a nickname for this one?
I think we call her Marjorie. She's the protectorate that she identifies with me, I think, by leaving me those gifts, because I do a lot of sewing and handwork. And then we do have children ghosts that they come and go because we hear their laughter, or we see they're mischievous. They're the ones that I think take off the sun catchers off the window just to annoy me, because then I have to work that. Oh, now I got to clean the window again. Let me put this back. We have, if we still have the 3 or 4 SS officers downstairs in the basement, that could be a possibility, because somebody had picked up on that. Bill Bean said, yeah, there's some down here. There's a couple of dark entities exactly down here, but also, it was about maybe at 7. I think we have always something going on here. And as I said, sometimes we've had them coming and going, but my son's dreams, he's had quite a few historical figures, people who have just mentioned who they were. We think they must come in. If the portal's open, they see an opportunity to come and let their presence be known. Because when my son had this one major dream, there was a woman he first saw behind bars in a prison. And then, at the same time, there was a man typing like a manuscript, but he was in one section of this prison. But then when he looked over, there was a woman behind the bars. She was dressed in a white dress, and she had a dead flower in her hands. And in back of her was the initials L. Let me see. It's MLJ, and he didn't know what that meant. Then her foot was a ball that turned red and had the number 6 on it. And as he's seeing that, she's trying to convey to him that she feels betrayed, and she's angry at my son and saying, shame on you, that something has been betrayed. And then he sees a director at the same time saying to someone named Heidi, come on into the scene act 2, and has one of those collapsible cards for the scene change. And that also was all present. So my son called me in one morning. His head was pounding, and he said, you've got to write this down. It's like I have to empty my mind. So I just frantically wrote whatever he was saying to me. And I wrote, and there was all these different people had come in on this one dream. Later, we find out that all 3 people are significant because they all died within a week of each other. One was, we had the name of the man. He was a German writer. He had passed away at the age of 65. Chris had his name almost completely except for one letter. The other woman behind bars was Marie Louise Jean, who died at 96, had been member of the White Rose, a resistance group who defied the Nazis. And my son got 3 names out of the 6 that she had the 6 near her. 3 of the members, he got the names. We did not know even what the White Rose was, or had ever heard of that. And he had 3 of the names of the people that were beheaded by the SS. And then he's going down, and he's got this man who is in the shadows. And my son is trying to say the name Stutzstaffel. And I wrote down the way he could pronounce it. And it turns out that's the term for SS. Then he gets the name of this Hans, who is a producer or director. And his wife was named Heidi, who died, and she was an actress. And they all died within a week of each other. So they apparently, Marie Louise Jean was the main person who wanted to come through because she had the message for us about what the White Rose was. And then the other 2 people probably saw the opportunity to come at the same time. But that's an extraordinary thing that my son got every single thing correct, what he was trying to convey to me, that I've now researched the White Rose, and that has taken me in a whole nother direction with someone in Texas who is also investigating the role of the White Rose in the resistance movement in Germany and the people associated with that. We feel that something with the White Rose is a direct conflict to my friend's father, that he knows about that and is coming after my son and I because there's some connection with the white rose to my son and I, perhaps in the past, we just don't know. But this has made a lot of sense to me, because why do we have this coming about? I never even heard of, I didn't even know about the white rose. Now I know a lot about it because I've been researching it. But Sophie Scholl and her brother Hans were both beheaded at very young ages because they were students, and they were sending propaganda leaflets out to say against Adolf Hitler. And they were captured by the SS and they were beheaded. And my son's got all this information that, why are we connected to these people at this point? Like, why this? And this will be probably more that we research. That'll go maybe into the third book, because we touch on it in the second book, and it's extraordinary.
Yeah. Anita, we're coming to the end of the show now.
Aren't you glad you had 2 hours?
Need 3, don't we?
Yeah,
we
almost 3 for this interview.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're going to have to edit a lot.
So Anita, for our listeners, tell them again the name of your books that are out, and also if you have your website, how people can get in touch with you.
Okay, thank you, Mark and Irene. My books are A State of Horror and Dark Transference, which is the sequel to A State of Horror. They are on Amazon and Kindle, both in the UK, Canada, in many countries. It's gotten very well received and good reviews. Also, my website, there's several. You can go to my main website, AnitaJoIntenzo.com. But also, if you want to go directly to astateofhorror.com, that has a link to purchase my book if you'd like. And also hauntedauthor.com. That'll also take you to Dark Transferences page. I also have a blog that I write, and I have over 150,000 views on that. It's all different aspects of our adventures that we've had with all this paranormal experience that I've written. There's a lot of photographs on the blogs that will be really helpful for your viewers and people that want to read the book and don't see the pictures in the books. But on my blogs, it's haunted author. Let me see. It's Anita Jo Intenzo -hauntedauthor.blogspot.com. And if you're interested, there's 75 blogs on there, and there's many different ones archived from the last couple of years that will take you to some real interesting things that have happened to us, more than that we even talked on the show, but that might be of interest to them too. And also, if you catch Portal of Doom from A Haunting, sometimes that's on YouTube. Sometimes people have that up. And I don't know if the actual Haunting page, the TV page has a link to that past episodes, but you might want to check that out too. But yeah, I hope you all enjoy reading what we talked about.
That should whet their appetites, definitely. Well, and Mark, where can anyone find us?
Well, again, you can find us here on the Dark. I'll take that. On Paranormal UK Radio Network, Wednesday nights from 10 to midnight. We simulcast on TalkStream Live and TuneIn radio apps. We're also, if you miss a show, catch our podcast on Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, and God knows where. I know there's several others out there, but that's all I can remember.
And we also simulcast on StreamFinder.com, Auto Radio, Streamer, and 1,000 others.
Yes. But Anita,
we're literally all over the place. And on a Monday night, we are on Dark Matter 10 to midnight.
Well, Anita, thank you very much for coming on the show and being with us.
It was really very special. Thank you, Mark. I really enjoyed talking with you, having a conversation.